Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so all of you guys, I was just doing a little intro with Kelsey. So there's always like kind of a weird, like, okay, now we're going to start.
Right.
But Kelsey is a client of mine. She's a photographer. She is the owner and photographer at Kelsey Kimberlin Photography. And she's been a client of mine since I was thinking about this before our call.
I know.
2019? Is that when you first
Yeah, it was,
started
it
working
was
with us?
the like 6 months before kind of the COVID lockdown and everything started.
Yeah. So that's, I don't know at what month, but that's like
Yeah.
2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Which is
more, maybe.
crazy.
Yeah. It is
Yeah.
totally crazy.
Right.
So I wanted to have Kelsey on to talk to her about her decision to do coaching, why she felt like it was a good fit for her experience with coaching, what she feels like she's gotten out of it, with the purpose of helping anybody out there who's like, I know I need help in my business. I would love to be like doing better or meeting my goals or just feeling like things aren't quite so hard, but I don't really know like what I need. So this is really to give an insight into her personal experience to see maybe something she says will resonate with you, maybe it won't. Take it or leave it. This is to serve you
Yeah.
however it works. So let's start with, do you have any sort of intro besides what I gave
I
you?
think you covered it really well.
How long have you had your business?
I have been full-time now for 7 years. I shot on this, I kind of unofficially was a business for five years previous to that. So almost 15 years. Yeah. And I feel like I've kind of tried tried a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm super curious. What
Yes.
is it that caused you to want coaching in the first place? Like, why is it that you came to me, connected with me?
Yeah. Um, I definitely felt like I was in a place, and I had been in this place for like 2 years of knowing that there was something missing, that I just needed this upgrade in my business, or I was going to stay stagnant. And I am like, at heart, I'm a DIYer. So I am like, I'm not a stupid person. Like, I work in marketing before I, really niche down to just photography, but I'm like, I can figure this out. And so I tried a lot of different methods. And I think I'm a big believer in therapy and like self-growth. So I think I finally just took the leap to invest in my business the way I've invested in other things like my hair. And
Yeah.
so
Right?
yeah, I just needed, I really felt like I needed that one-on-one, like outside perspective of what was going on with my business to get it. I knew something was missing, but I couldn't quite figure it out on my own.
Okay, so you said that you felt like stagnant for a while. What was going on?
I was successful. Like I'm hitting goals, but not necessarily in the way I wanted. And I had gone through, I think, a major time in my business where I think all of us, when we go, especially like creatives, when we start our own business, like I thought that this would be a little bit more satisfying, and that hitting that moment of realizing that, like, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this the way that I'm doing it, and something is broken. So that's what, like, really kind of finding myself and what is, my joy, and like what is making this all the whole purpose of starting the business. So yeah, it felt like I was really burnt out.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
were you were also working a ton. Yeah.
I'm a confessed workaholic. So, but that's what I think. I just knew that there was like a way to, I think I'm smart enough to know that like there's a way to work better here that is also still like creating the life I actually want, opposed to the hustle method, which served me. I think that was one of the first things we talked about. It's like that served me well for a time in my business, but I was entering, my sophomore year of like, I'm ready to move on from that way of life, of just the lifestyle of it.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
So, had you tried to make some of those shifts, like work less,
Yes. Oh my
make like what you had tried that before me?
gosh. Yeah.
What happened?
Well, I suck at boundaries. So that's, I mean, I think that's one of our biggest things we talk about is as much as like you try to set yourself up for success, it's like you always kind of end up losing sight of it when you get busy and when you get, and it's like this really mixed feeling because you're having so much success, but then like you never get this feeling of like achievement from it because of the way you're working. And so for me, yeah, it was like never really holding myself to accountable. And I just really, I don't even think I knew how beneficial it would be when I first started. I think it was almost like, I don't know. But then when we started, I was like, oh, this is amazing. Because it was just having that kind of check in with somebody else that probed a little bit and made me think about things. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am doing that. So I had I've had so many eye-opening moments working with you. So like really things that I'm like, why didn't I think of that? So,
Yeah. So let's talk about what have those been? Like what has shifted
oh,
since so we've to give everybody some perspective, we worked together for a period of time and then we had a break of time and that was
yeah,
mostly in the thick of COVID. And
yeah,
that's not
really,
necessarily why we had our break,
no,
but
it just
that's
happened that way. But I
yeah.
mean, for me, one of the best tools I had was working with you right before. I mean, I think we ended in January and then February, like COVID happened. And so I don't know where I would be if I hadn't have put in that 6 months with you beforehand, because I think mentally I was so much more prepared to like handle that ebb and flow of things. Um, and I just was a lot more grounded. So the big eye openers that I have had is really more about like I just got done telling a friend that this is like therapy for your business. Um, because you touch on so many things. And I think especially for entrepreneurs, it's like every part of our personality, our histories, some of the things, the way we were raised and our feelings about money are all going to affect how we perform in our business, in our personal relationships, in our relationship with clients. And so for me, it was like seeing these, like we just had one like last week, this moment of being like, I am totally doing that. And it's because I have this kind of feeling about money or something. So there's been these moments of just eye opening, like that's obvious, but I never tapped into it. And like when you have that awareness, like feeling so much more like kind of empowered by like knowing, first of all, that I can work through it and that I'm going to like handle it differently, and just changing my frame of mind about how I go about some things. So,
I love that. I love
yeah.
that. So I want to touch briefly on so that touches on the like the personal benefits I think of coaching.
Yeah.
Like just the and this has been my experience too. There's this like I don't know, it's kind of this simultaneous like weight is lifted off your shoulders and you can kind of like just ground yourself and relax a little bit in knowing like
Sure. Yeah.
okay, it's not just me. I've got a little help here. This is gonna happen. Like it can happen in a way that supports
Yes.
me. I have the tools. And if I hit a roadblock, I have help. It's not
Yeah.
like I
That's
don't need to.
yes, that's a major thing for me. I have said a lot, and I have a really supportive family and friends, and even some creative entrepreneur friends. But I always tell people that sometimes like owning a business feels a little bit like you're on an island. And that was what I wasn't kind of getting out. I'm like I said, I'm a DIYer. So I'm like all the free education online. I'm like, yes, like I have read every blog. I have done every workshop, that anything I could get my hands on. And I've paid for a lot too, but I've never felt like I had someone like full on like in my business. And that's what, as soon as we kind of sit down, it's like I don't have to give you a backstory of things, and it's like this kind of check-in. I have moments throughout the week where I'm like, I'm having a feeling about this, I'm going to talk to Libby, like I'm going to check in with Libby about this. So that's what I really feel like, I have somebody that like gets a side of me that a lot of other people don't, and like I have someone to bounce things off of, because it's just lonely sometimes being on your own as a business. So
Yeah.
that's been a major benefit for me.
Completely. Especially, I think that that's true of anyone who's doing business by
Yeah.
themselves or even has a small team, but like they're the one kind of in charge because
Yeah.
you're in your head and our head believes that there are right answers and wrong answers. And like sometimes it sees things the way that other people wouldn't
Yeah.
see them. And we start to like certain beliefs crash and it's
Oh yeah. I remember like one of our,
problematic.
well, I remember like you're making me think about like one of my big eye-opening because I just talked about it yesterday too. One of my big eye-opening moments was talking about like that some of my employees. And it's like when I have to be the captain of the ship and but then like you get a little resentful because you're like, I don't know how to do this. I'm not a boss, but you know, everybody's looking at you. And so it's kind of that's where I'm like, I feel like it's like therapy slash mentorship slash just you're my coach. And so I'm like, you're here for me to
Yeah.
sometimes cry with, sometimes like rage with, but you know,
Yeah, and to hold
it is.
hold the vision and the belief when you feel like you're
Yeah.
not there and all of that stuff. Totally.
Anytime I feel lost, I always leave our conversations feeling like I have a real sense of direction and I know exactly like how I'm going to handle things. And if I am ever unsure, then I kind of put it on my mental checklist of things that I need to talk to you about next week. And that is just, I think for me too, like it gives me a person that has a lot of kind of anxiety and stress and works a lot. It gives me a way to be like mental note, put it on the list and set it down. We will discuss it next week. And like, it kind of keeps me moving. Whereas before I started working with you, because I was a workaholic, I have a pretty high amount of anxiety. And it's like, sometimes the weight of things, it can feel crushing. So that's like one of the biggest things for me, I think is really just feeling like I have that space now to like explore those in a time where I have somebody working me through the process in a positive way. Um, you know, and I've worked a lot, it's changed a ton about how I feel like I speak to myself.
Oh my
All of
gosh.
our
I mean
exercise.
that I I care so much about my clients' success. It's
Yeah.
crazy, but I care I think if I had to rank it, I care even more about the way that they talk to themselves
Yeah.
because that is your experience of your life day in and day out. And
Yeah.
when you're in a place where the inner dialogue, and for a lot of people, it's they don't even think that there's like a negative dialogue, but
Yeah.
there are some things that it's just like it
Yeah.
causes this kind of like eating away anxiety and pain, and life can feel so much
Yeah.
lighter. There's so much hard shit about life already
Yeah.
that we don't need to make it harder on ourselves. So
Yeah.
that is
I
like
mean,
the biggest thing that like is just means so much to me when I hear clients say that.
yeah, it's had a huge impact on, I think, kind of my realizing my like self-worth. And that's why I say it's a lot like therapy because you know, there are things that you just don't realize are affecting your business about like, you know, I mean, we've talked about so many different things that I don't know if when I started with you, if I thought I would go into talking about them, but it has been eye-opening of things that, you know, I don't even realize I'm doing that now I'm like, wow. And so it really gives you this sense of like, I'm working on myself and my business and like to be the best version of both. And it makes me personally feel like when I get off of our calls, I'm like, everything is good. We're in a good place. And like, it just feels so empowering.
So that's a really good segue to bring it back to when you came to me, you were in this place where you felt stagnant, but you also said, and this is like a major red
Yeah.
flag for me, that you were feeling unsatisfied
Yeah.
and a little bit maybe unfulfilled.
Mhm.
Um, and you're somebody who has like big goals and big vision, big
Do
dreams, right?
I? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I
I mean,
think.
I think I told you last week I was going to run an empire. So, you know,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally. I say most of my clients fall into that bucket. I mean, I
Yeah,
would say actually probably all of them. I can't think of
for sure.
anybody that doesn't. And so when you have these big visions and these big dreams for your life, but you feel stagnant and stuck and unsatisfied, a lot of the pain comes from the, the
Yeah.
distance that you see between the two, right?
Yeah.
So I'm super curious, like as we grow, we continue to have big visions and big dreams, right? Like
Yeah,
you've experienced growth since we've worked together for sure.
absolutely. Yeah.
But what is do you feel more satisfied now than you did
Oh my
before?
gosh, 1,000%. I mean, we went, for me personally, as a wedding photographer, like we went from me like saying, I don't ever want to shoot a wedding again, to kind of rediscovering what I love about it, and like actually choosing to take that other than like rather than other types of work, because I think it gave me the permission to like to keep my boundaries. One of the big themes that we work on a lot is my like value system around like where I feel validated, and like with praise and stuff, and like serving people and people pleasing. And so for me, it's like I was actually hurting myself. I was actually keeping myself down. And with that, I mean, we just did this last week and it was like eye-opening for me. It's like with that came a lot of like disappointment in myself, and knowing that like, I'm not doing what's really in my heart. And but now that it's like we've lifted that kind of pressure off of me, I feel like it's really tapped into a different part of like why I started doing this in the first place, that I forgot like 5 years ago, the way I felt about it. I feel like I'm kind of right back there. And it makes you feel like sky's the limit. Like I could do anything, if I can get my business here, like it has only grown. So it's really,
And
yeah.
that's like such a fun place to be. It's fun to
Yeah,
feel
I'm
inspired
excited.
in your business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited again. And 2 years ago, I was not. 2 years ago, don't get me wrong. It's like I didn't want to go back to the office and the working for other people. Like I never wanted to do that. But I also like didn't know how I would ever sustain what I was doing. And I almost felt like a fraud, because it's like I'm pretending that I love working with these clients, and I'm not feeling satisfied at all when I go to bed at night. And it's just like the
Mhm.
grind. And I
And it
really,
is
yeah,
so draining to show up and feel like you have
yeah,
to fake it.
yeah. So that's what now I feel like I'm like really showing up genuinely for people and myself. So,
Yeah.
there's no faking it.
There's also this amazing thing that happens when you get to that place where you're like, oh, I get to choose exactly how I want to be successful. I think that we have
Yeah,
so many stories and dialogues about
I completely agree with that.
what's going to work, what's not going to work, how to be successful, how to not be successful. And when you actually realize
Yeah,
the like big like secret that nobody talks about is actually you can be successful however you want to be. It's a
yeah,
matter of choosing what works for you and then making that work in your
yeah.
business. It's
That's,
like
yeah.
then it's fun.
Yeah, I think that's where I came from is I'm super hard worker, and for a long time I worked a full-time job and my business was full-time, but I was just scared. And so I was accustomed to working 60 to 80 hours a week, but now I kind of feel like if I have to work over 40, I'm cranky about it. And
I
like
don't want
sometimes
anybody working more than 40 unless it like really fills their cup.
and that's but like a lot of times when I do choose to break that boundary, this is a sentence I would have never said 2 years ago. When I choose to break that boundary, it's because it is making me so happy to do it. And like that wasn't a thing for me 2 years ago. And I think that's what I thought success looked like.
Mm.
I've really rewritten
Oh my gosh, I
what
almost started crying you saying
I
that.
know. And that I have goosebumps. That is what I think the overall biggest change for me is been that I have like this process has really given me permission to like write my own like journey and my own story of what my success is going to look like. And I've always struggled, especially I'm a photographer. People don't always, I never felt like they took that seriously. So I thought I had to work 80 hours a week to prove to everybody that I was successful. And, that's not doing anything for anybody. And there was no way I was going to keep doing that for the rest of my life. And so it's just really redefined what success is for me. And now I'm, financially, personally more successful than I've ever been by doing that. So, I mean, that's the biggest reward in the world.
I love it. I love it so much. That's what I was going to add. That was going to be my second to last question was
Mm.
you're working less, you're
Yeah.
more satisfied. I
Yes.
would say that feels like you have, I don't love this statement, but it feels like you have higher quality clients. I don't
Yeah.
like to put clients into quality buckets and not quality buckets because
But
that's
I mean,
so
as far
picky,
as,
but
yeah, I think I'm working with people that really value me and really value what I do and what my personality brings to the table and my stylistic, creativity on it. So yeah, I feel like I have a really great clientele that values me. So
and okay, actually this is still my second to last question because that wasn't really my question. Through a pandemic,
yes,
one of the industries that I would say is maybe the hardest hit is the
yes.
wedding industry. Wedding
Fortunately,
and
yes.
hospitality, right?
Yeah,
And
for sure.
that's where you're like, we had worked to get you starting to move out of that,
Yeah.
but your business model was still pretty solid in that, right?
Yeah.
So,
I was more than 50% weddings. So
yeah, and that got shut down. So I am so curious,
yeah.
working less, more satisfied, pandemic hits, now like in 2021, are you making more money, less money, the same money than you were before?
More money. Definitely
More
more.
money.
Yeah. I've definitely still, I mean, even through the pandemic, which was very hard, but like, I'm not going to say I didn't lose some money that could have been, but when we started, working together again, it was like having these ideas on how to pivot and serve people through the pandemic. I actually think, first of all, it made me feel great because I had a lot of clients looking at me for answers. And as far as being an expert in my field, I felt like it was a way for me to actually slow down and serve them. And that was really gratifying. And I think that honestly, it helped me as a business too. Like they valued me even more. So I really did try to have a good attitude about it and push myself to be somebody that could like lead by example on how we can get through this as a community. But so I think it fared well for me because my clients all came back and we just moved things. And I actually ended up pivoting into some other areas that are now taking off. And so I am shooting and working less with better quality clients or people that really value my work. I'm making more money doing it. I have a whole nother area of my business that I think will serve me as I grow. That is also probably doing at least 20 to 30% better, like growth wise.
I love
So
it. I love
yeah.
it.
And that's just in like, yeah, this like year after the pandemic, like that, the new stuff we implemented is now growing more than ever. So yeah, I feel like I
I
mean,
love it so much.
taking stock of all of this right now, it makes me feel like I'm like really grateful, just really, really grateful that, unfortunately so many other people like could have experienced some of the worst stuff in the pandemic, but I think I did a lot of work beforehand that made sure that I at least had the core there to survive it. So,
I love it. Okay,
yeah.
so what would you say to people who are, whether doesn't matter if they're new in business or have been in business forever, but they're in
Yeah.
a place where you were before, like sort of stuck, sort of unsatisfied, or like feeling like there's something missing that you're just not figuring out?
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing is there's no real roadmap to how to do this. And I don't think any of us really know. Like, if you think go ahead and do it. And then you'll find out like every month I find out something new or every week. Because everybody's different. We all have different skill sets, especially when we're doing these types of businesses. So to me, that's where I've done a lot of the kind of education in groups, not like bigger groups, like bigger workshops, but I was having a hard time applying the things I was learning. I've learned a lot of really valuable things, and I think I've kind of cherry picked what I've applied, but it still wasn't serving me like overall. And so I think it's really easy to get into this place of overwhelm because you're just like, I'll try this, I'll try this, I'll try this. And you don't have this really clear direction of where you're going and how you're going to get there. And then you have all of these not like serving thoughts throughout the process. So diving into those, I mean, whether you're starting out or you've been in business for 20 years, I don't think this could go wrong at all for you. Like, it's the best investment I've ever made, just not only in my business, but just myself personally. There's so many things that I have kind of been like, and worked through. So I mean, I think it's one of the best investments. And when you think about all the things you invest in, I don't know why, it's easily paid for itself. So I do like to
Yeah.
invest in things like hair. So I'm like, I easily would do that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel the exact same way
Yeah.
about investing in coaching and support. And it's why wouldn't you get help? It makes it easier. It makes the journey better. It makes you
Well,
feel
like,
better every day. It
yeah.
helps your growth. Come on.
I mean, there's some things that in business that I've always been a big believer in kind of outsourcing. Like, I don't want to do my accounting. That's not my wheelhouse. I'm an artist, and social media is hard for me sometimes. And so I outsource some of those, but I kind of feel like I almost got it backwards. Like, if I had to do it again, I'm like, this is probably the first thing I would have invested in. It would have saved me a lot of time. But here we are either way. So I don't think there's a wrong time to do it. And especially if you're in that place of overwhelm, like, this is the difference between you shutting your doors or not, and
Completely.
this is your livelihood. And it's most of us, creatives, it's our passion. So being able to like work through something that we're so passionate about, but also as a livelihood, like, that's complicated. And
It has its own
really,
unique complications, and
yeah,
it requires a different perspective in problem solving. And
absolutely.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because a lot of people that are just business coaches coach people just for the financial gain or the business growth.
Yeah.
And that can sometimes be detrimental to personal well-being
Yeah.
and your pleasure and your like
Yeah.
personal, you know,
And
personal health and mental health.
yeah.
And that has not ever been how I want to coach people. Like, it has to be balanced. It has to serve both. It has
Yeah.
to serve you as a human and a creative, and it has to serve your business. And there is always a way to figure that out. I
Right.
just don't think that we're taught how to through that lens of having both variables come out on
Yeah.
top.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
all of this
I
with
mean,
me,
it's my
with my
absolute joy to
people.
get to talk about how amazing this has been. I recommend it to everybody. It's really one of the best decisions I ever made for my business, Libby.
Oh, you're gonna make
Yeah.
me start crying again. I love you so much. It's so fun for me to see your growth. And it's I think like I don't know. I also think that a lot of people come into business thinking like, "Oh, once I figure it out, all my problems will be solved." And you're the such a good example of
Yeah.
someone who is like so committed to just like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have someone support me, and I'm going to just bring whatever comes up and work through
Yeah.
things together, because it doesn't have to be stressful and debilitating.
No, that's one of the things I say to, when I work with any like interns or young people wanting to kind of get into this stuff, is I'm like, you kind of have to accept that, like, you've got to start to be okay with being a little uncomfortable, because it's constant growth. It's constant kind of pivoting and figuring out where you are. But isn't that the fun part too?
That's I was just gonna say that's what I
Yeah,
think is fun, which is I think is like why I
personally,
probably love
yeah.
coaching, because I'm like, oh, everyone bring me all of your problems.
Well, and that's
I
one of
like
the
that.
reasons I left like the corporate world, was because I wanted to be able to kind of write my own path, and like, I didn't want anybody to cap my success. So
Completely.
that's, yeah, but what I didn't realize is that kind of overwhelm, anxiety, all that stuff was capping it. So that's what, getting to that place where you're actually excited about change and about like, I don't know what'll come up next year, but it's going to be exciting because I'll be able to like handle it and navigate it. And so it's really refreshing, honestly.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and that
yeah.
growth happens, in my experience and seeing my clients, that growth happens more exponentially when we're in a fun place, when we're inspired, because that's when the creative energy is there. That's when the creative juices are there. And when we're in a state of stress or overwhelm or whatever, anxiety, your brain literally can't problem solve from
Right.
that emotional state.
Yeah.
So even if you are problem solving, it's like 1/100th of your ability.
Right.
And when you're inspired, you see these solutions, or you see these
Yeah.
ideas you've never seen before.
That's a big thing for me, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Lindsay. Thank you.
I appreciate you so much.
I
Have a
appreciate
wonderful day.
you too. All right.
Okay. Bye,
Bye.
Kelsey.